Okay, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. We're going to kick this off. People are still sort of filtering in, but a very busy schedule to take you through for the next hour. My name is Joe Peak. I'll be sort of refereeing slash hosting the next hour on exception management and how AI can be applied to help navigating unpredictable landscapes of supply chains. I've been with Windward about 18 months now. I've been in supply chain for about 15 years. So still very much learning as I go, but I'm joined by two sort of co-hosts or speakers. First being Ami Daniel, who is our co-founder and CEO of Windward, who I'm sure
who's still learning every day.
Good, exactly. Beginner's mind. I'm sure Ami's going to provide like lots of color to this debate. So look forward to that. And then Niels Helles Borgen,
who's also still learning.
There you go, exactly. But you're not on the beach, so unfortunately. But no, Niels brings with him a wealth of experience from the carrier side and elsewhere in supply chain management. So between the three of us, hope to have a good debate. I'm told that please, all attendees, drop questions into the Q&A box. I'm going to try and carve out sort of 4, 5, 6 minutes towards the end of this to see if we can answer them between the three of us. We should know enough to be dangerous. If we can't answer them, we run out of time, or for whatever circumstances, we're going to send an email response, just giving you as much detail as we possibly can. So cool. Without further ado, I'm actually joining you from London, and it's grey and overcast if you're in my part of the world. So if you're not, I hope it's better where you are. But just very unashamedly, for people that haven't worked with Windward or haven't come across us before, I wanted to take a couple of moments just to introduce the company at large. We're a publicly traded company on the London Stock Exchange. We're about 180 people. And we're very much AI tech innovators. We're early adopters of artificial intelligence, and we're pouring large investments into research and development to releasing and applying new ML practices. Very much a customer-centric led approach. What I mean by that is that we work in lockstep with our customers, some of which are at the bottom of this screen, to make sure that we're only releasing features and products that actually shift the needle and create value, right? So we have a robust roadmap. We very much invite the customers to provide feedback and release in stages together. The red thread that runs through Windward is very much decision support. Okay. And the accuracy of our insights is absolutely paramount to the operations of the companies that we serve. We operate within 3 different sectors. The first being government and the public sector. So we service the likes of navies, coast guards, intelligence agencies, etc. The US government, for example, is one of our largest clients. Very much providing maritime domain awareness. In the middle here, trading and shipping. What I mean by that is energy and mining companies, traders and shipping companies. If you think of the likes of the oil majors, BP, Shell, and Exxon, about 50% of the world's oil that is traded, the vessels, are actually screened via the Windward platform, okay, within our SaaS offering. And then last but not least, and sort of nearest to our hearts, I think, is the supply chain and logistics arm. This sector of Windward started a couple of years ago, was a brainchild for probably 2 years prior to that. And we've gone to market really targeting freight forwarders, cargo owners, ports and terminals as well. Again, we provide a visibility solution, answering the question of like, where's my stuff? But today's sort of discussion around exception management is now where we've landed to provide decision support for supply chain professionals. We're working with some of the largest freight forwarders and cargo owners in the world as well. So before we get into exception management, I wanted to just quickly take a look back of what's occurred within the visibility sector and within the visibility market. I'm going to share some of my thoughts. I really want Niels and Ami's content here as well. But from my standpoint, having been involved in the visibility sort of realm for a few years now, I think that the space has become highly commoditized. There's a huge uptick in providers that are trying to jump on a bandwagon, kind of coming out of COVID of like, where's my stuff and when's it going to arrive? I think there's a lot of companies that are trying to create value through a very very narrow stream of just providing visibility and milestone information. We have seen plummeting prices, right? And I think also plummeting value propositions around just providing visibility, milestone information on where stuff is. And also some of the recent feedback we've seen, and also some of the research ourselves, is that there is a true ceiling as to how good you can get being a visibility provider. The source of truth is typically the carriers. And so reliance on that carrier data is kind of going to cap the solution as a whole. Ami, Niels, I don't know what your thoughts are on the matter. I know that Ami, you've probably got more than most, but what have you seen that's changed over the past sort of 2 years?
Yeah, I think first, hi everybody, good afternoon. I'm just outside of Tel Aviv, and here it's very sunny and it's actually very nice. The wind is nice, had a good run, so it's all good. So if we take a step back, visibility is really a means to an end, I think. So I think it all kind of came about when COVID was. I think really interesting to talk to a lot of customers. I am absolutely shocked that many of the customers we've met have paid $500,000 or $1 million a year for a visibility solution and haven't even integrated it. So I've seen the last couple of weeks 10 very big organizations, which I think together move $6 or $7 million a year, and they bought something they aren't even using it. So I think that's one really important comment, which is I think creating frustration with management on, hey, we're paying for this stuff, we're not getting any value. So I think that's one comment. Second comment is, I think what's becoming the most difficult part of it, I think, is gaining the trust of the operators. At the end of the day, you're talking about thousands of people who day in, day out live on the terminal website or live on the carrier website or stuff like that. And I think we've seen hundreds of cases where somebody bought some solution and an operator saw a difference. And they're like, no, we're not trusting that anymore. We're reverting back to the carrier website. So in my view, from what I'm seeing in the market, it's really about a bit about awakening. I think people who've bought visibility, sometimes just switching it off, sometimes saying, okay, what now? And sometimes they want to make sure they're getting the value and talking about the adoption and digital transformation, which I completely understand. And while COVID was booming, then people are like, oh, just get me this visibility, stuff will be okay. But now there's no COVID, freight rates are back to normal. Actually, global trade is deflating a bit or going down a bit. And I think that creates challenges. So I think it's not just about the solution, it's about the value. So I think that these are some thoughts. At the same time, there's just more of that, because probably like us, more people sat around COVID and said, how about we should provide an ocean freight visibility solution? And actually, some of the visibility solutions that were acquired maybe are a bit falling apart, I think, because of different reasons. So that's my view about the challenges of lay of the land. I don't know if it's helpful.
No, very helpful. And Niels, you and I were speaking this week just about, although the volatility is settled, it's not actually a bad time to start investing in some of this stuff and looking at exceptions as well.
That's right. So hi everyone. My name is Niels. I'm generally based out of Dallas, Texas, but actually currently sitting in Denmark, where I can report that the weather is not super fantastic either, just like Joe was saying. Having said that, yes, Joe, you're absolutely right. I think so. When I think of visibility and the context that I've been working with it in terms of flow management, particularly on the containerized side, then I think about the fact that there's a lot of talk in the market that, you know, vessel schedules are becoming more stable now post-COVID. The volumes have gone down, and so there's less stress in the system, and volatility is generally going down, which may mean that some people are less focused on it than what they have been. But in my experience, even we're not back to the same levels of low volatility as we have been. We're not at an all-time best in terms of supply chain predictability. And B, history, if it teaches us anything, we're going to get into unpredictability territory again, or highly volatile territory again at some point in time. So there's no better time to invest in improving the scenario ahead of that than there is now, where things are, you know, as stable as they probably have been in the last couple of years. So I think now in the market is a good time for people to think about this investment, even though, as Ami was correctly saying, freight rates are going down, and there's some financial pressures. A number of the players in this field have been earning quite handsomely in the last couple of years, and I think a number of them also at board levels should be willing to prevent the same kind of challenges that they had when going into COVID, where vulnerability and volatility really became high.
Sure. Thanks, Niels. And to like segue into sort of exception management from that baseline or that benchmark of visibility, we find that to Ami's point, actually, a lot of customers either have better visibility or perceive better visibility. They have that in a data lake or CargoWise One or their ERP if they're a shipper or a BCO, and it's just sitting there, right? So now the question that we're posed is, what do we do with it? I've got all these data points, all these milestones, but now what am I doing to surface some form of exception or an insight layer above that? And we find that if people aren't willing or able to get there, that sort of visibility information becomes very sort of stagnant or one-dimensional. It's that whole concept of what, so what, now what, right? Which is where I think we've landed on these exceptions. Ami, have you got any thoughts about?
Yeah, I think visibility is that thing people wanted to get for exceptions. Sorry to say that. So, nobody wants to take the tube. People want to get to where they need to get to. The tube is merely a means to an end. Sometimes it's a taxi, sometimes it's a tube. Sometimes it's ocean freight visibility, sometimes it's terminal data, sometimes it's rail data. But really, like, stats show that the vast majority of the containers and shipments are on the happy path.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you want is understanding which are not on the happy path. Why are they not on a happy path? And what should I do about it? That's the thing. So, and that could be based on a visibility solution, could also be based on your TMS solution. Or it could be based on terminal data or rail data, whatever. I think for the first time, it's time to separate between the provision of the data and the generation of the insight. If you go back to the 1990s, and Niels, I'm sure you've heard about this company called Business Objects, right? So if you go back to software, kind of enterprise software, in Tableau, maybe they ate a bit Business Objects lunch, but whoever really knows like business history understands that Business Objects said, actually, there needs to be a layer above the ERPs of the world. I think they were eventually acquired by Oracle, if I remember correctly. So there's one business figuring out, putting the data in silos, slicing and dicing, and there's another business provisioning the data where stuff are or is, but then there's another business of figuring out what does it mean, what should I do with it? And I think that's what's emerging. And I have to say, from my experience, and also from our board's experience and broadly tech experience, this is natural when technology evolves. In the beginning, everything kind of looks the same. All the market map says like the same words. But actually, also in our business, we started by reading the real-time transportation visibility paper by Gartner. But as we evolved, we created another category together with Gartner, which is about insight. It's not about visibility. So I think broadly, people should think about TMSs and ERPs, provisioning of shipment data and visibility data, and a layer above it, which is the business intelligence and the insights. And I think naturally that's where we are. Whether it's based on your data or on our data, it's what your people need to take the day-to-day decisions. It's what you need to do to make better procurement decisions. And it's what you need to go when you go to your customers, internal or external, and says, hey, here's how last month was. Or to your carriers, hey, here's how you've been doing. I want my money back. Or, hey, I don't need to pay this D&D. I think it's all based on that concept of separating the visibility layer with what do I do with it layer. And the what do I do with it layer, this is like our current view, but I think it's never a finished product, just like we are never a finished product as people. It's constantly evolving because there are endless ideas in the world, and actually generative AI, which I'd love to discuss at some point. Here, I think it's just pushing a lot of people towards automation of this logistics work.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point. And we're not here sat saying that exception management or management by exception is anything new, right? I mean, this is as old as the hills, how people have calculated the difference between milestones to surface has it happened? Should it happen? Did it happen? But I think the automation of some of these things on the right, this wheel, or even the predictive nature, right, of understanding is a vessel going to arrive at the port of loading on time, right?
But visibility is also not good. People have been reading manually on the website, on the carrier's website, right? You're simply automating. None of it is new. This is AI coming to automate, streamline, and make you more productive. Just like if you want to, and you know, I wanted something, an approach to something. I asked ChatGPT today, you know, how would you approach, you know, planning a trip with family? I could previously Google it, read like 10 articles, make notes, and stuff like that. Now I can just get boom, 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 boom. This is how you should think about it. Same. Yes, Niels. Sorry.
No, I was about to say I have two thoughts on this theme. So one is, and I think Ami, you were saying it in the intro that you know the operators of today, they actually spend a lot of time on carrier websites or terminal websites. I realize that that's a lot of the feedback that we're getting, and probably is a reality for some people, but a number of the people that I speak to in the industry and a number of my own experiences on this is that in reality, cargo operators, whether they are in freight forwarders or in BCOs, quite often actually really only know that something is out of happy flow, you know, a few days before it hits destination or doesn't hit destination as expected. That truly is the reality for a lot of people. And when I think about happy flow and versus exceptions, I think about, as you were saying, Ami, that you sort of separate and say all the things that are going to plan and will cost me, whether I'm the forwarder or whether I'm the cargo owner, the things that I had budgeted for this shipment to cost me, those I don't need to look at. But I need to look at the ones that are going to cost me something else or have a consequence that will cost me something else. So the price of non-conformance of not being in happy flow, those are the shipments that are super interesting to me. And that's where I think exception management is going to help add that extra layer of separating those things that are important from the things that are not important, and B, where the predictability and customization is going to end up helping to say, these are the things that are going to cost me more than what I was planning to spend. How do I get the best recommendations to make that extra cost as little as possible?
Yeah, you speak about that configuration. So I wanted to flick to this this slide now. It's a perfect segue around, and it's just a broad question really to like those on the call and sitting watching this. You know, do all your customers need or require the same level of service from exceptions? And one of the things when I think about that question is around, does everyone get the same level of service? Is everyone based on their vertical and the product type that they're moving need to know of exceptions and be notified immediately? And when you think about that, there's also a problem around when you're surfing exceptions around false positives, right? So coming in the morning, trying to manage your day and understanding what's happening and getting notified of something where you think something's happened and it actually doesn't exist, or you haven't set those thresholds or those configurations correctly. I mean, Ami, you and I were talking to a number of enterprises now that are running control towers over their sort of like their top 50.
I actually think it's a really good insight. I think the 80-20 rule, and I'd love to talk about and connect this business discussion, this tech discussion to a business discussion, if it's okay. From a forwarder's perspective, most companies I've met meet the 80-20 rule, which means 80% of their revenue are derived from 20% of their customers, broadly saying. So really in these 20% of the customers, many of them get a white glove control tower service, which is actually different control tower to control tower. Yeah. So auto manufacturer in Germany won't get the same SLA as an auto manufacturer in France, while the SMBs in the long tail would take that. So I think right now the perception is, let's give operators visibility. They'll figure out according to their SOPs and SLAs alone what's an exception, and they'll deal with it. So I think technology is just pushing the human a bit down the line gradually. So now you can define with technology, obviously you can know where the shipments are done, when they're going to arrive with a better accuracy than carriers, great. And then, which is predicted DA and stuff like that, great. then you can figure out or configure what constitutes an exception, what are the SLAs of my 20% of my biggest customers, and make that flow down with that definition to the operators, as well as then define to them, perhaps with generative AI, what are their SOP, what they should do with it. So actually, we're optimizing our workforce. I think in a low margin business like forwarding, which is broadly 2.5 to 9% of margin broadly, and the fully loaded cost to handle a container is maybe $180 on the best performing forwarders, and maybe $300 on the least performing forwarders. I saw Ryan from Flexport said today it's 10% of the container cost, maybe. But I think kind of every dollar matters there, because really that defines if you are the top echelon of performance, everybody gets their bonuses and has a great year, or the bottom echelon and everybody's like, okay, yeah, we're 1% margin. I don't, Joe, is that helpful?
Yeah, no, it certainly is. The other thing that I was thinking about there is that like the mid-market forwarders that we speak with, typically their differentiator above, the top 5, call it, is the fact that they're able to like tailor their services and their response times and their customer service to that particular customer, right? But they're doing it purely on a manual basis, and it's a huge operational lift. So any marginal gains or efficiency gains you can get there from configuring exceptions, we're seeing like a ton of value for that mid-market range.
But again, a couple of thoughts. Okay, go ahead. Please. No, so a couple of thoughts on this is for the operator, all this customization is making it super complex to make the right decisions when exceptions happen, right? Because an operator is sitting and handling X hundred of containers at any given point in time, whether they're with a forwarder or whether they're with a big BCO, and you may not be able to understand all the specifics to each of those containers. So I actually like the thinking of do all your shipments need the same level of service, which they clearly don't. My own experience, take a shipper like Nike that always has lots of cargo moving around the world. The white t-shirts has a less grade of importance, both in terms of time sensitivity and other things, than the World Championship soccer balls that have to be there at the time of the World Championship. And so if you don't, as an operator sitting with this cargo, understand that difference and take that into account when you make your decisions, you're going to not do the right level of decision making for those shipments. So I think that's a place where AI can help tremendously in actually filtering this, which is very, very difficult for the human being to take into account.
Yeah.
So that's the.
So I do have one comment that I think maybe it's a bit out of the box. I think what's happening with generative AI is pushing the big companies in the world to adopt technology faster. So I think, in my view, the pace, it's not my view. In Accenture's view, Accenture says that 97% of enterprises will spend more next year on technology than this year. So Accenture, McKinsey, and everybody else. So basically, I think maybe sitting on your hands was an option, but I think increasingly the world is increasing its adoption, and I can test firsthand it's happening in logistics. So it kind of doesn't matter. You can go at this 3 or 4 different ways, but you need to go at this some way.
Mm-hmm. I want to move forward because we've got some statistics here around like live forwarder data. I think that we've like captured the essence of like automating exceptions quite nicely, configurations. But I wanted to lean into this table because this is live freight forwarder data. Just to explain this in sort of layman's terms, there's a lot of stuff going on this slide. 15,000 containers are being shipped per month. Okay. And what we're raising here in our Windward AI exceptions on the left-hand side of the table is enabling a forwarder to come in at the beginning of the day and focus on what matters, right? The proactive nature of these is that we're actually notifying the operator on average 25, 24, 23 days in advance of the vessel arriving that something's occurred on that shipment. So if I just play out like the first example here, so there's been planning issues and late vessel allocation affecting the ETA. If you think that probably applies to something like a feeder vessel somewhere in the middle of Europe, if it's then going into Southampton, 34% of the delays are affected. 34% of all of their delays are actually in this category. And Windward's actually able to notify them 25 days prior to the arrival of that. So if you think through the lens of forwarding operations. A lot of people that we meet, their sort of strategies or their targets for like this year and into next year is how do we become more proactive and more reliable as a customer service, and we're seeing that this is supporting.
So I actually want to chime in for a second if I can. I think we met a big enterprise last week in Europe, and I was really interested to hear how they played back kind of the value, and that was Where's Waldo picture. So in the beginning, they showed us, here's Where's Waldo. It's a fuzzy picture, or we can see the people around the picture. Who's Waldo? Who's not? Visibility shows us the picture, but we still see a lot of people. It doesn't find Waldo. Exception management is finding Waldo. So from all these people on the picture, you just deal with that guy. And now I'm giving you 25 days ahead notice. Whether the operator goes to the terminal website or the TMS or the visibility solution, I don't really care. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I think it's a first step towards automation because it makes it more efficient, and it just takes proactive exceptions. It says, just look at these, whatever, right? 10%, 5% of shipments, and look at it from that specific perspective. Look at the schedule, look at the predicted transshipment and so forth, and let's think about what you can do with it. Let's stitch the SOPs to what you can do with it.
Yeah, I like the notion of, and also where I've been in my past and been building digital solutions for flow management, I like the notion of the operator being able, before going home in the evening, closing off for the day, to be able to see what are the shipments that are most likely to be the ones I need to be looking at tomorrow, because there's something here that I need to do something about. And to then in the morning when they get in and wake up, that they're able to sort of open the screen and say, what are the things that I really need to focus on this morning? Not in terms of the emotions of which of my customers, if I'm a freight forwarder, which of my customers are screaming the loudest, but which are actually the shipments that are most important to do something about. Because today a lot of people, operators, are taking decisions based on emotional stuff. Who am I needing to satisfy because they scream at me, right? Who makes my day miserable, and who can I solve a problem for that makes my day better, rather than what are the problems that I can impact that have the biggest value for my customers.
Not only that, Niels, though, but also having worked in like ocean operations, typically if you're notifying a customer late of a delay, it actually gives the shipper or the importer very few options to like correct inventory flows, manage levels, arrange temporary labor at destination, rearrange haulage, for example. So if you think from closer to destination or the port of destination, they're getting fewer and fewer options to actually have an impact, a decisive impact over the supply chain, right? And minimize some of the effects and costs of that. So I think bringing these advanced notifications whilst people still have a choice, right, is also delivering a lot of value as well.
I can just go back to the theoretical Nike example, right? So, and it's not that I want to bring Nike as it, but it's just to have something to put the hat on, right? So,
Niels, just do it.
Sorry. Yeah. So on a typical shipment, Nike would make their purchase order with whoever is producing their goods quite a number of months in advance of the cargo having to be at destination, right? So you could let's just take 90 as an amount of days that they were placing a purchase order with a vendor for producing tennis shoes before the goods had to be in their warehouse in Lagdal or whichever warehouse they were shipping the goods through. Yeah. Now, in that 90 days, a lot of things are going to happen in your supply chain. And if you only know 2 days before the vessel hits the final port in Antwerp, bringing the goods into Lagdal, that something is off track, it's obviously going to cost you more to fix it, whether that's flying goods in order to replenish your shelves or whether it's doing something else, than if you get that notification earlier. So clearly, the more in advance that you are able to see that something is going wrong, the better you are able to plan with a lower amount of price of non-conformance to stick to the verbiage I was using before.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Niels. Very, very helpful. I wanted to double click on transshipments. Big topic of conversation with BCOs, cargo owners, freight forwarders, pretty much like all segments that we speak to. Some of the research shows something like 30-40% of all shipments go via a transshipment hub. 5 of the busiest world ports are actually transshipment hubs as well. Now, Niels, you and I were debating sometimes it's a cost benefit to go through a transshipment hub. Some people don't even have a choice. some people don't even know, right? Some people think that they're booking direct services, and then all of a sudden you're transshipped in Singapore and you just don't have visibility over it. So I wanted to sort of play back sort of our view of like the management of transshipment tracking. It's a complex thing. There are so many different like handoffs and things that need to align, right? That for in order for something like this to occur in a happy flow. But Niels, I just wanted to ask you from a carrier standpoint, like what are your insights to the volatility of transshipments?
Yeah, and it's not just from the carrier standpoint. I was sitting with a major forwarder in the US last week before traveling to Denmark, and they were saying definitely that transshipments is a key point of invisibility to them, right? They're just relying on the transshipment happening as planned, and again, quite often they don't know that it didn't happen as planned until A, after the transshipment, and B, maybe in some cases only just before cargo was supposed to have arrived at destination. So clearly transshipments is adding volatility to shipments over direct. From a carrier standpoint, do not believe that transshipment is a bad thing. It clearly is also helping reduce the costs of supply chains because you are able to put more containers on the main leg of the shipment and therefore distribute the total cost end to end over a bigger spread. So different carriers have different strategies on how they go with this. Transshipments are definitely here to stay, at least for the majority of carriers. When I think of this picture here, I think it's actually a good depiction of how things are. When you are a bulk shipper and or forwarder dealing with full vessels, then you're talking about the direct A to B. You're not calling any other ports than the 2 ports that are involved in your loading and discharge, typically. When you're talking about a container supply chain, you're obviously talking about being one of many thousands of containers on board a vessel. And this vessel, even if you're going direct, will call many ports en route that are irrelevant to you as the forwarder or container operator or cargo owner, but relevant to the shipping line, right? So on a typical Asia to Europe end-to-end routing, a vessel will have 12 ports of call, 6 in Asia and 6 in Europe. That's a typical Asia-Europe string. So you have 12 port calls. So if you're loading on the first port of loading and discharging at the final port of discharge, the vessel that you're on, even if you're on a direct vessel, calls 10 ports that are irrelevant to you. But for each irrelevant port, there's a risk of strikes, weather delays, crane breakdowns, things that can impact your shipment that is relevant for you to know about in terms of, is my cargo arriving at destination? So it's not just the transshipment angle, it's just simply the fact that your shipment is involved in so many things that are actually irrelevant to your shipment, but impacts the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think from what you described there is why it's so important to have a predicted ETA that considers transshipments, right?
Yes.
That is only on the final leg of like your ocean operations, but as soon as you have a booking reference or a container number, right the way at the port of loading, actually having a prediction that goes through transshipments, even if you have 1, 2, 3.
Is the vessel that my cargo is on arriving to this port of transshipment on time? And is the vessel that it's going to be loaded onto arriving at the port of transshipment on time? Because if those 2 things are not happening, there's a risk or increased risk of missed transshipment, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to be arguing that transshipments are bad because I don't think they necessarily are, but they are clearly an extra point of volatility.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Ami, any thoughts on TSs? Love them, hate them?
Necessary.
Necessary evil, very good.
Nothing is bad. Nothing is. It's logistics. Nothing is good or bad as long as you're doing it with, deliberately and with awareness to what's happening. That's it. It's like it's a point of where the supply chain can break, and just I think getting to know that ahead of time, that's useful.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks. So I wanted to move into more of a sort of analytics sort of discussion around particularly carrier procurement and how you assess sort of carrier behaviors. Having been in a lot of like carrier procurement discussions and even like bidding on BCO shipments around, which legs you're going to bid on and what transit times you're going to bid on, the conversation's always really been around, well, how fast does it get from A to B, right? So you have a shipment going from Shanghai,
And what's the price?
and what's the price, right? So those two,
Or maybe the other way around. Mostly, what's the price, and then más o menos if you can get there. Like, kind of, who cares?
But then the transit time becomes a little finger in the air situation of maybe a look back as to like how it performs over the past like few years, but typically it's pretty underwhelming in terms of how you assess these types of decisions. What we're seeing is, surfacing the insights creates a level of accountability, right? Particularly on carriers. So this has been anonymized, obviously, but you can see carrier A here has got a number of planning issues. Now, if that is detailed across a particular lane, you can then decide to, make better decisions around should you be procuring the freight on that particular service. And I think the extra dimension above, as you rightly say, Ami, transit time and price is just enabling people to make a bit of a better decision on the procurement.
So I want to chime in here. I think what I've seen is, and I want to come back to where I started my comments on the visibility side. A lot of people we've met haven't even integrated the visibility table. Okay, so to do this, you don't just integrate it; you actually integrate to Power BI as well, and you have this, which obviously we fully support, and you have a monthly review of your accounts or a quarterly review of your accounts. So I think it's quite easy today with GraphQL APIs like what we provide to integrate via Chain.io or directly. And Chain.io have been, shout out to them, they've been a great partner to us, into many forwarders and cargo owners who want to just automate and streamline that integration. But you need really to integrate to your TMS, have one source of truth, and then also to Power BI. And then it's quite easy to slice and dice it this way. But I think more often than not, and we've spent a lot of time with carriers as well, people just meet and say, how do we once a quarter, how did it go? Went good, it's great, what about the price? Give me a discount. And I think as markets evolve, people are becoming more sophisticated buyers of services. And I think, by the way, it's true also for us. Think about this thing called the phone, right? So my daughter can already tell you, she's 9, how many megapixels is in the camera. So that makes her a more sophisticated buyer than I was at the age of 9. So as we all get used to technology, we can all be more sophisticated buyer. This is the same case here. There's no reason that somebody procures 100,000 containers, 500,000 containers, should just go blindly there and says, what's the price? So how about doing a bit more homework? And also, I think it can lead to providing, and I did spend time with a BCO in Europe that is quite sophisticated, creating very clear KPIs to these carriers and measure them month over month. So I think in all the business books, it really, if it's OKRs, objectives and key results, or MBO, it doesn't really matter what the technical term is. But when you run a company, you want to make sure you do it in a data-driven way that everybody knows they're aligned with the same goal and how are they doing. In my view, ocean freight procurement isn't there yet to a large extent. And I think a second outcome of these insights, a first outcome is business outcome. Better exceptions, better handling, less D&D, less last 3 days and so forth, happier customers. But a second business outcome is better and smarter procurement. And I think the visibility providers, we talk about the quality of data. I'm more interested, and I think it's super important, by the way, just to be clear, but I think the businesses need to be clear about the quality of outcomes they're getting, not just the quality of data they're getting. I don't know if that makes sense.
And I think that there's a different different evolution that has been happening over the last sort of 10, 15 years as well in terms of procurement here, where in the past potentially you would have transport procurement, ocean freight procurement, very different from an ocean freight management, very different from the rest of supply chain management, where supply chain management is more and more becoming an executive board level a topic, and you see more and more supply chain directors or EVPs actually becoming part of the executive boards, and this is obviously because you don't want to just look at the transport costs isolated for the ocean freight. You want to look at the impact that the transport has on the entire chain. So So we're talking about also the D&D at destination, the detention and demurrage at destination. You're talking about the SLAs in terms of being able to do the transport at destination in the right way, about having the right level of warehousing capacity available at destination for the cargo that's coming in, etc. To tying these things together, and that just makes, again, the case more complex for the operators when having to choose, and that's where technology can help make those choices slightly simpler.
Yeah, I think my only it's not caveat, is my only refinement there is, I think it depends who's the persona. If you're a forwarder, then then your consideration is probably cost based, and how do you run that, and how do you procure that, and how you balance that yield management, if you will, between the different carriers. If you're a cargo owner, probably look at inventory of water and how much inventory you're building or not, and how much reserve capacity and inventory you keep in a warehousing, because that's a big cost driver. Yeah, so I think that kind of that's a big outcome. So that's why I keep coming back when I work with C-level executives, which I do it with all our customers, fortunately, is AI is great, but what's the outcome of that? I've seen many enterprises, great, give me AI, done, I get it. Or it's like, give me visibility, I get it, done. What now? So I think we should start with the end in mind about what are the business outcomes we expect to get, align all the organization, push the adoption, and actually get that business outcome sooner rather than later.
Right. I think this is probably a good segue into what we're presenting here, in that a lot of people that we're now speaking with want to get to a value creation orders of magnitude above what visibility was ever able to provide, right? And you've mentioned there with that BCO that we were speaking with quite recently, around how do they actually bring in their own data as an input to power our AI models, then in an unstructured format create exceptions and value on top of that. And I think on the left-hand side we're showing containerized milestones, AIS locations, etc., as a visibility solution, which is, there's plenty of those out there. But I think on the right-hand side now, the value proposition that BCOs and freight forwarders alike are saying, okay, well, we have a baseline of visibility, right? Like that's table stakes. We have that. We don't want to buy that twice. CargoWise One, for example, public information, they're getting all the time better and better and better with that container automation module of theirs. So how can then we ingest that information and then pipe back the insights on top of that? And I think that's probably the next evolution of where we're going.
Yeah, I think yeah, please, Niels, sorry.
No, I absolutely agree, and I think of that next evolution in terms of business rule engineering, almost, right? Who becomes the business rule engineers? Who are the ones that defines what are the business rules for? If you're a freight forwarder, what are the business rules that you're operating under? If you're an operator in a freight forwarder, what are the business rules you need to take into consideration when you deal with your shipments? And those business rules include, all the contractual things that you have with the carriers and with the truckers and with the ports and with all the other stakeholders in the supply chain. And as an operator, it's almost impossible to have all of these business rules in your mind. So you're making a lot of your decisions on all your shipments on the basis of relatively generic business rules, where I think future models will be able to deal with that in a more structured way. So I think of this as business rule engineering.
Yeah,
I'm coming back to my I'm coming back first of all to my business objects reference from 30 years ago, and then Tableau reference from 10 years ago. Right? It's basically the same. You as a customer, you have this treasure trove of data. Some of it is structured, and that's shipment data or HS codes or POs, and you can happy for you to provide it to kind of augment the underlying value of insights. And I'll give you an example. I've written an article previously in Supply Chain Brain. There's this EU11 sanctions package. It basically says if you are a chemical exporter, importer, or a car manufacturer, or a semiconductor company, or a bunch of other categories in technology, you can't go via Russia. You're not allowed, period, full stop. And that's applicable as of end of July. And I think historically Americans were leading the sanction space. This is actually a leading move from the Europeans. And a lot of people are just not aware of that. Having said that, a lot of the customers have the information of the HS codes or know whether it falls within that. And CargoWise provides great denied party screening, but it doesn't get into that level.
Yeah.
So by providing that flag, whether it is or isn't, whatever, at certain levels of HS codes, we can provide further insights, which are just on top and above and beyond whatever you can do today, and tell you this is going into Russia. Another example would be D&D contracts. That is just rates. We don't know your rates. Nobody knows your rates, but you can provide better predictive analytics by processing these rates and combining that with exceptions. And I think we have a whole lot of examples, and I think that is where generative AI actually changes the picture a bit, because it makes a document ingestion and unstructured data much easier to tap into. So I think in our view, the way we work with customers, it starts with a goal. Like, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do this? You know, do you want to succeed? How does success looks like? And then you can actually leverage all these tens of millions of dollars you're already spending on the TMS and, you know, the ERP or these contracts you shoved in the drawer, and actually get the benefit of that to automate your operations. And actually, I think Flexport has received quite a lot of fire recently. But I think that the basic idea underlying Flexport still holds, in my opinion. Could you build, theoretically, I'm not talking about Flexport, I don't know them well enough to comment about them. Could you build, with technology, a more efficient operating system for logistics? My answer is probably, if you do it from the ground up, the answer is yes. Great. Since nobody's building it from scratch, or almost nobody, how can you augment what you have today with your data and AI to get some quick wins to move your business in 2023 and 2024?
I just wanted to lean into like one specific example we actually heard last week, where a freight forwarder every year is writing off 800 to 900,000 GBP in deal charges, right? Just because they're unable to reconcile who was accountable, who should have paid it and who should not. So they're actually absorbing that cost. But with a bring your own data model, where we're able to ingest that carrier data and those contract information and flagging exceptions on top of that, creates that insight. So that's a very, very specific example. We've got a few minutes left, and I just wanted, this is a big question, but I wanted to like hand over to you, Ami, to shed some light on like Gen AI and where it plays a role in this industry.
Yeah, so let's take a step back. I want to explain just in layman terms what is generative AI. I'm sure a lot of people looked at ChatGPT, but generative AI is a technology that can generate insights and content based on a pre-trained black box. So GPT is generative, pre-trained transformer. So ChatGPT is chat with a generative, pre-trained transformer. Transformer is a Google tech from 2017, 2018. Actually, it's based on a research called "Attention is All You Need," which was written by Google. Actually, the breakthroughs in the last 6-7 years are by Google researchers and OpenAI, and these guys really took the lead in the last couple of years. I think in productizing that and kind of opening the markets. I think the vast majority, I think it's clear right now that AI is able and will be able increasingly to automate mundane tasks. So I think the view, and I'd like, you know, there's a nice little book coming out called Generative AI for Leaders. There was a nice book called The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman, which I really like. Just finished reading it in the Day of Atonement. It's called Yom Kippur a couple of days ago. I really recommend both of these. But anyway, I think the view is that in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, every one of us on the planet will have an agent, AI agents actually, and these agents will not be AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is kind of Skynet in Terminator 3, right? That's AGI gone bad. And AI is what you see right now, which is can you predict the next word, or can you predict next task? Sure. I think there's something called ACI in the middle, which is artificial capable intelligence. And that artificial capable intelligence will be able to tell them, can you open a store for me in Amazon and take this $100,000 and make them $1 million? and that will break it down to 100 or 1,000 tasks, including email that's stored in China, email that's manufacturing, do the research, and what should they sell. This is probably 5 to 10 years away. Nobody really knows, by the way. In supply chain, it's clear that one of the challenges is manpower and mundane tasks people are doing. So I think there's absolutely an application in reading and analyzing emails, clear as daylight, connect your emails, analyze them and get something out of it. B, in looking at your contracts and analyzing them and combining them with stuff. C, automating responses and actions of people that need to do that. I think there's still a cost side to that nobody really understands completely because it's really expensive. But I think that will go down like with every other technology. And if you read NVIDIA research and other people's research, Intel and others, there's another really interesting company called Cerebras Labs, which create GPUs and chips purposely built for generative AI. Because NVIDIA's GPUs are not purposely built for generative AI. It's an off-label use, as well as Intel's. So there are companies purposely building chips and microprocessors for generative AI, which will probably make it much more effective.
Yeah.
So wrapping it up, emails, document ingestion, and automation of different actions, I think.
So, those three like wrap ups definitely help, but it's still a very complex thing. And I think that some people there's senior execs out there that are saying, take a look at Gen AI. How does it apply in our workspace? Here's $1 million. Like, get it done. Like, let's see some values from it. But one of the things that we are constantly saying is kind of the party line is just lead with a problem statement, right? Like, don't bore the ocean. Is it detention demurrage that's the biggest headache, right? Do you want to automate responses from delay reasoning? Like, what is it that you want to get started with? And that typically gives us the right entry point.
Yeah, you're right. I'm going to refer to the Gartner hype cycle. We're at the peak of inflated expectations.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a panacea. It's not that you throw generative AI, everything and it works.
Yeah.
Well, one of the issues I'm going to come back to again is costs. I spoke to Microsoft, some of the ideas we have, and they told me, well, this could cost like $50,000 a day.
Yeah.
A day. So not a month, not a year, a day. So in a 2.5 to 10% margin business, you can't spend $50,000 a day. It's just a non-stop. So I think you need to lean into that. You need to have product functions, talking with the business. I didn't find a way to start. Just throwing. I personally believe that foundational models are probably the future, but there will be an ecosystem of specialized applications, like there is, by the way, in cloud or any other thing, around specific domains like supply chain. And actually, you could replace the word software is eating the world with AI. AI will be like software. It will be everywhere. Already, it's a lot of people. It will just be everywhere.
Yeah. Niels, have you got any closing?
Yeah, I was just, and I just got to thinking of this as you were speaking. I mean, I was just reading yesterday something that Tim Cook from Apple had said that he'd sort of forbidden the use of the word AI because he wants to make sure that it's always preceded by a problem statement. There's a problem to be solved, and then AI can be the part of the technology that's used to solve that. But let's not talk about AI just because people are willing to spend money on AI, because even at board levels, it's something that people know very little about. But define those problem statements and then figure out. So I just thought that and it goes very well with what you were just saying, Ami, that let's define the problems first.
Yeah. Joe, I think we have a few questions. Do you want to attend to them?
I do. Thank you for that. So first one, actually, and I'm going to throw it out there to any of us to answer, really, but could you please elaborate on how Windward's exception management insights can be integrated into our existing CRM?
Cool. So no problem. So CRM is customer relationship management, right? Which is basically the sales forces of the world. So I think some people would like to integrate the TMSs, some of the CRMs. It's kind of the same. It's kind of one and the same. There's an API, GraphQL-based API, which you can take and can integrate to whatever you want. The answer is probably you want to build a flow that says where does the exceptions go to which of the customers. and you want to make sure your customer service people know how to, with like, you can go into the notes field or to an alert field, and we also have a CRM. We constantly improve it because we constantly learn new stuff. Who's the competition, or what does the customer want, or what's their volume of the business, or who are the buyer, influencer, user, and what's the org structure, and yada yada yada. Because you want to retain as much data as possible about that. So it's easy. API integrate directly into CRM. No biggie. I've seen people do integrations between an hour and 5 days. And if you latch on the SOPs to that, CRMs and TMSs are technically the same. Actually, I think a CRM might be easier to integrate into.
Cool. My thoughts on this, just adding on to what you were saying, Ami, is that particularly when we think about the customers, so if we think about freight forwarders and their customers, then you want to make sure that you intelligently apply this integration so that you do not just forward everything uncritically to your customers, because they may not want to know or need to know every single thing that is happening. So you need to sort of have your business rules define what are the things that we pass on directly to our customers.
Yep, agree.
Yeah. Cool, thank you. And then just finally, and I think that probably brings us to the top of the hour, is what are the main primary data sources that Windward relies upon to create highly accurate exception alerts?
Yeah, so I think there are 2 ways to answer that. One is our own data, which is carriers, schedule, weather, port data, augmented with our proprietary and patented ship movement data, which we create our own metadata for vessel activities. That is pipeline from fusion, cleaning, entity resolution, metadata, models, stitch up with an AI orchestrated network to provide you recommendations, predictions at scale. Another option would be we're just providing exceptions and predictions based on whatever data you have. And obviously there's a hybrid version where give us your data, we'll augment it where you need to get to. Obviously the more data, the better the insights. And that applies for rail data or terminal data and so forth. I would think of this specifically as an ocean thing. I think of it as a warehouse to warehouse thing.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, any closing thoughts or any things to sort of leave our listeners and viewers with?
Niels.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess my closing remark on this would be that I think that from my experience in the almost 30 years in this industry, it evolves all the time. Getting people to be more efficient at what they do, getting people to be able to make smarter decisions, I think is always a worthwhile activity, and I think it's super exciting where we are right now, that technology has new capabilities that we just did not know just a few years ago.
Yeah, my closing remarks is I think the rubber has hit the road, and I think this is the time where I think a lot of companies understand what's hype and what's reality. I think people need to be realistic in their expectations of technology, but also what's service and how you can count on. And I think you need to think about what's the brand you affiliate your name with, because you don't want to necessarily be with something that implodes. So in my view, better to work in tandem with people you think you partner with and you trust at a C-level. Mark the target, and put your money where your mouth is, and work back from the end backwards.
Yeah, thank you. And the last thing I would probably add to that is that right the way from the introductions, like very much a customer-centric led approach. We're in listening mode, right? Like there's a ton of change right now in the market. Gen AI is going to revolutionize most of the things that we actually do. And right now, the product and where we're innovating and developing is only centered around customers and their input. So look, happy to stay in touch. Thank you very much for everyone's time. We're bang on the hour. So hope to see you soon and stay in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.